Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Future of Post webinar. We're actually going to break out the crystal ball and hopefully get a look into the future and what the post brings. But we have a great set of panelists here. I'll let each of them introduce themselves here to talk about trends that they see or things that they're hearing about with the future of post-production. So why don't we go ahead and start on the end here?
I'm Tony Palermo. I am a post-producer in television, episodic television. I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm beginning.
Hi, I'm Carey Smith. I'm a post-producer, features and series, but mainly features.
Hi, I'm Steve Barnett. I've been a post-production executive with 20th Century Fox, 20th Century Studios over at Disney, and now I'm working freelance post-production.
And I'm Robert Tonkin. I'm the head of production technology engineering at Amazon MGM Studios, and I'm formerly of Evolution Media as head of technology.
Great, and I think I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Michael Krulik with Avid's Market Solutions. Welcome to the Future of Post panel. So we're hearing a lot of things, obviously, about the future. We're going to talk a little bit about maybe the skills gap and maybe hit on the recent strike. But I think the biggest topic that's on everybody's mind at this point is AI and how it's affecting post-production. Is it affecting post-production? So I just want to get your takes on what you're hearing about AI in the jobs that you do.
Oh, the one constant since I've started this business has been change. And so AI is just another change, and we all have to embrace it and go with it. I'm not seeing a lot of it in post-production yet. I think it will be best in as a data mining tool and as a search tool and research. Yeah, I've talked to different post houses in the last couple of days, and some of them are saying, no, we're not touching that yet. There's no reason for us to. We like the human element that we're doing. I talked to another one this morning and said, we're heavily into it. So it's interesting to see where we all go and who's keeping up and who's not.
Wow, I wonder how that will affect that. I mean, like we go for our roles and between prep and shooting and post, who's going to use it more? Because right now in post, we already use it with certain aspects and syncing, and in our personal lives, we use it in what we watch because it, algorithms will, search things for us. So for me, if it's not a tool that I can use and use well, then I don't know if I'm going to invest in it. I think for post, what it'll do for us is it will make it a little bit harder, and we'll have more of a communication with the studio when it comes to legal stuff that we're trying to pull in off of the web or create with a AI tool.
I'm kind of seeing it as a tool in the same line as, Avid scripting tools about lighting up lines and different takes of different readings. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that there's a creative process that's predicting that these are serving as tools rather than taking over the creative process. So if in the future, somebody can push a button and do an auto assembly of a scene with the final circle take the director had just to put it up there, all well and good, but that's going to take away a creative process from the first assistant editor, who the editor may have said, hey, can you assemble that scene for me? And then there are going to be editors who don't want to see a scene assembled in advance, and will watch every individual take themselves and decide whether that nuance of that performance or whether that pacing or that rhythm is appropriate.
Are there circle takes anymore? Because I'm usually print it all.
Yeah. That's an interesting.
So good luck, AI.
I've heard I'm on the digital. That was last time.
I don't anymore. Yeah. How much? It would hear for the last take the guy.
There you go.
And then the middle one, and then the first one, and we'll just kind of see. But then.
I think it's definitely true that you're not going to have an assistant editor if you have that scenario you're talking about where it assembled it for you.
Right.
The assistant editor normally would have watched all of those in order to select them and put them together. So they're getting the experience, they're feeling the nuance of what was happening in the scene and maybe how the actors were portraying things. But that's just not going to be there if you're doing that. If you're starting from that point where everything's assembled, it's just you're now going to go into the editing process without that wisdom.
Yeah, when I haven't seen everything, when we switched from Flatbeds to Avids, I used to think that just fast forwarding and back through the film somehow embedded the imagery.
Yes.
You wake up in the middle of the night and you go, oh yeah, that shot with the thing.
But you have I mean, as an editor, not that I am, but the editors I've talked to, they're like, if you have, and you read the script and you have an idea of what the scene's going to be, going through those dailies yourself helps you pick and choose of what you're going to want to do. Not that essentially you're going to cut it right there, but you need that. It's like getting ready. It's prepping for shooting. They're prepping because they're ingesting it to see what they want to pull from. I don't know if an AI can do that.
And don't you think they're basically, the other thing too is that, you know, it helps inform the assistant editor when the editor finally makes a choice.
Yeah.
Why didn't they choose this shot? They want to be thinking in their head, why was that one chosen versus this other shot? And if that's, you know, that if you've never seen them, you know, not really going to know.
There, when we switched from, you know, moviolas to Avids, I'd been the assistant editor, and I remember standing over the shoulder of my editor with the 2 shots that I thought he was going to need. And so when he said, give me, you know, this code number, I was always really proud that I had it in my hand already. And that learning process.
So you were the first physical person in AI? That was.
Yeah, no.
You were anticipating.
Exactly.
So,
You know,
It's currently being converted.
it's the part that AI algorithms are like,
Yeah.
you know, that guy.
Watching and listening will get to you.
Yeah. We were talking the other day about, I foolishly was in a room with a very renowned editor, and when we were talking about ADR schedules and everything like that, his assistant editor popped up a shot on the monitor that I had seen while I was waiting outside, and I had laughed outside. I might, you know, just sitting there, oh, that's funny. So when it popped into his room, I said, oh, that's a funny shot. We finished our discussion of ADR, and I left, and then, you know, 30 seconds later, I could not hear my name going, Barnett. And he walked down the hall and found me at the coffee machine, and he says, if I want your opinion on a shot, I will ask you. I have only one time to see a shot for the first time. And you commenting on it, as idly as that was, has an influence on now what I think about that shot. He wanted to be able to just absorb the gestalt of the shot and take it in, and how will it fit in this scene, how will it fit in what would the character be saying in the next scene. He didn't want me.
They want it tainted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something to consider because AI will choose for you. But I don't think it's for the creatives that exist now. I think it's for the up and coming creatives. But then that bodes the question, what kind of quality do we get? And does the human need to go back through and see if they can make it better?
I mean, I think like what you were saying about it, you know, creating you a finished product. I think we're a ways from there for lots of different reasons among all the ones we just talked about. But I think, as tools, and we were just talking about the noise of the room or picking room tone or echo or whatever it is, the machine learning models are mature and expert at doing something that was actually basically impossible for you to do in post.
And you walk into a mix stage now, and there's no more rack of machines anymore that you have to attach to. It's all just computerized, and
Yeah.
they have their tools right inside the computer.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the mechanical processes will be helped by AI, but it's just important that we remember that somebody, you know, be it a novelist or a director or an editor, these storytellers still have to make a creative decision as to how that moment where I cut on that frame instead of that frame is going to impact the rhythm and the storytelling and the audience's understanding of that character and his motivation does.
Well, I mean, the studios can't take more people away from our cutting room. They've already, you know, we're already small and condensed as it is. The last 2 movies I've been on, I've only had 2 assistants and 1 coordinator. And, you know, one of them won the Oscar. So it's like, I think you're going to have assistants that are now going to be tasked with controlling the AI or monitoring the AI and doing some kind of chain of command of where you
Management.
Yeah, data management, exactly, of where we're pulling stuff. And so maybe we're going to get an extra body or 2 back, which would be nice. But creatively, I think you're never going to get rid of the editor. You're never going, you know, you're going to have the captain, your first, who disseminates all the information and keeps track of everything. So for me, it feels like it's going to be tasked with a little bit more tracking.
And I'm
wrangling.
in television where you have one assistant editor that's all they're going to do, and they're not going to get to any of the creative stuff where they got to learn then to step up and be an editor.
Mm-hmm. Which then begs the question, how do they get to do that?
Yes.
I mean, even the whole creative process, like you were mentioning, being the first to see the footage, I ask editors a lot of time, do you like being on set? Do you like seeing the footage before it goes into editorial? Is there anything beyond the, before the, okay, action, anything after the cut that could be used for editorial as well? I mean, is AI going to pick any of that up?
That's a good question, because when my husband was an editor in television, he would go to outtakes to pull stuff in that was gangbuster for the scene. I don't know if that's gonna, because it's how they're programmed, right? You still need a human to program all that stuff.
Exactly. So I feel definitely, there are certain areas of post-production and the collaborative team that will be hit or supported by AI. I mean, where do you see that may be? Is it in pre-production? Is it in, there's so many elements with, location, storyboards, costume.
Well, that podcast, the Alan Smithy podcast, was talking about how it would help line producing, because it could forecast a move, what it would do trickling down into your schedule. And also for locations, they can use those, one of those goggles called?
The Apple.
Yeah, that they're coming out. They can use those for their producers. So if their guy's on location, he can actually shoot it and they can see it, so they don't actually have to go. How that helps them in their schedule and all that stuff, I don't know. It remains to be seen, but I do feel it might. It's still not we move too fast.
It's technology. I mean, realize that there was a time moving from analog to digital, SD to HD.
Yep.
I mean, AI is a new pioneering, a new forefront of technology that everyone's going to start embracing at one point or another.
All those changes were supposed to save us time and save us money, and they really haven't done any of that.
No,
because it's just expanded the possibilities of workflow. When I started, if you had more than an hour's worth of dailies, the head of the studio was calling down to the set and saying, "Why are you wasting my money?"
well, there's at some point there's this weird line about when are you going to be doing the final creative decision, or whether you're in a process of a creative decision. And so if you're doing a preview, we were just talking before cameras were rolling about the idea of how many of us have had the assistant editor or the PA come in and do a quick loop line because we threw in a preview tomorrow and that's going to advance the story. Well, are we allowed to use AI to maybe tweak that voice to match the original actor or actress? If we're doing a preview and we don't want to spend $1 billion on color correction, well, maybe we just fit keyframes in each scene and let the AI match it up for the benefit of that preview. Well, that's taking money away from the DI facility all of a sudden, and maybe they don't want to help that. And the colorist is going to lose the kind of creative process of doing the temp color that would inform his decision making when he does the final color. Or her decision making is the final color.
Yeah.
Same thing with when they're doing the dialogue. It's like, well, okay, just go in here and drop in room to mesh the ADR to the production, and then we'll come back and we'll fix it. But
but do you think that in some cases a lot of these things are expenses that the production would never take on? I mean, when you talk about if you don't like the color of the way your setup looks that came out of the DI. You're not going to go back and rerun it. So if you're never going to spend that money anyway, and you can have a tool that potentially can enhance the way that it's being presented during the previews, it looks more like
money for temp color on the.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of cases there are things where the cost would be prohibitive just by definition. Like they're not going to be done. But if you have a one button solution that could potentially even out, master a scene audio that's a little bit better, because that you're going to be listening to this for the next 18 cuts. How do you prevent that from happening? Because I don't think it's actually taking away from it. I guess that's the piece that I'm saying. It's not taking it away. It's actually just raising the process.
Yeah. When we talked a couple of days ago, we were talking about how, if you had dialogue during production that was shot and it wasn't that clean, AI could possibly help you and do that first pass. But you're still at the mercy of the human to final it and put it in there for the director, because the director's not, at least from what I'm hearing, is not going to trust the AI. He's going to trust the human that he's been working with for the past 10 projects, right? So, I think it's a tool to help us get a little bit further. So we're not maybe at the mercy of paying a sound editorial crew a lot of money to clean it up. Maybe AI does the first pass and then they come in and massage whatever needs to be done. But how does that translate into all the different factions like DI? Because DI is already using your tracking when you're tracking a scene for color. That's AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Roto's AI. I mean, visual.
I mean, even the relight within Resolve is like, that's also like creating depth. And
I mean, we're using it already. It's just everybody's
called that before.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not at the forefront as it is now. It's going to take your job.
I mean, at this point, with all the technologies that are involved in these tools, like the rotoscope artist, that's just kind of fading away. I mean, the tools are getting better at it and faster, and it eventually it'll be like, yeah, remember when, we used to like hand ping out all those things, frame by frame. And I think that, eventually I think if they're packaging the tools that are simple, that are super usable, they become second nature, and they'll just kind of start getting used in the process, just like those rotoscoping tools.
Well, it's all out of an Avid. It's better than a grease pencil mark on a certified print.
Yeah.
When you go to Burbank and the audience, what's that? And then now it's a dissolve. People will see that. So all of those technological advances have helped the creative process, because now the audience isn't thrown out by something that we would understand in those days, but they would not. But it's still a creative decision on every moment in the cutting room that leads to the story.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a total reliance on AI to what you all are saying. You're still going to need that human point to go and maybe double check what's being done there.
Well, it's not even double check it. I
feel like it's a guide.
Alchemic about
it's a
just
guide
there and watching the footage going back and forth and having somebody say, what we could do here. On Sideways with Kevin Tentnell's thing, who sits with Kevin most of the time. I mean, there was a shot of Paul Giamatti on top of a hill with Thomas Hayden Church when they're talking about who's going to be at the wedding, and at some point Thomas Hayden Church triggers Paul Giamatti about his ex-wife attending, and she's going to get married. And Paul Giamatti, sitting in the car, had an expression that went through like 20 emotions in 7 seconds, and he burst out of the car and ran down the hill, and great scene. And then at some point during the process, Kevin Alexander said, let's try a different take, just to see it. And for about 3 or 4 weeks, that second take that wasn't nearly as good in my slump debate, was there. And then they decided, and they went back. But they had to kind of go through this weird, indefinable thing to determine, that was the right take. That emotion in Paul's face did inform the scene better. That informed the revelation at the wedding when he discovers that his ex-wife is pregnant. And then he, turns left when everybody else is going right to the reception. Something that happened 60 minutes earlier in the movie.
Can AI tap into the emotion?
Can AI decide what the emotion is?
Exactly.
Or what is funny.
Or what is funny.
What is funny, yeah.
Or those pauses that you have between characters who are, that maybe takes more than 2 minutes of silence.
Can AI don't put the candle back? I mean, I don't know. Put the cadence of put the candle back. I mean,
Exactly.
Let's just stretch that out.
Iconic films, by the way. But as far as AI moving into post-production, do you see it? What opportunities do you see maybe coming out of it? I mean, you have people thinking that AI is going to take away from their jobs. Do you see any other opportunities opening up with AI? Do people need to learn more about AI in school that are going to help them moving into post-production in the future?
I don't think they have any choice but to learn more about it.
It's the future.
Geez, out of the bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the most important things is to know enough about how these tools are built and what they can and what they can't do today. And obviously that keeps changing. We just saw OpenAI released a Gen AI image generation tool that basically creates video on the fly. the capabilities of the tools are expanding, but there are things they can do and things they cannot do. And I think it's just like when you hear about fake news, like how do you identify like what's a true source? I think, understanding the technology and what the results are, I think it's going to be important, especially when we talk about, is it really creating something? I mean, today's AI is really just an average of everything it's ever seen. It's able to kind of direct itself in different ways, but it's all kind of derived from the.
But you want
same
something
original
that you
concept.
want it informed by what's come before, but you want something that somebody had an idea about. I mean, do you see this have you seen pre-vis artists that are using AI tools in the shows you're working on?
And I mean, some of the visual effects guys will, the pre-visual effects. I mean, because right now the movie I'm on, we had 4 temp artists start when we started cutting and post. So, I mean, that was untraditional for me, but they're pulling stuff off of the web and they're using some of those
Is it
tools.
just as templates for the action sequences and things?
No, it's just visual effects like anything from like the moon transition to stabilizing to painting a moon there for the transition because the editor or the director wants to see it in one way and then maybe change it and put the moon on the other side. It's just early, instead of flopping shots, we're using, they're using those artists, but those, again, the one place I see it's affecting the most is visual effects. Number one, they don't have a union. Number two, it just, again, for me, goes down to the legal. How much are these studios going to allow for AI to come into their world? Because for them, it is a responsibility, a legal responsibility to clear everything. And if you, like as it is right now with stock footage, all my stock footage researchers say, tell your crew not to pull off of YouTube because it's so hard to do that. Well, what happens when AI is using YouTube as one of its learning tools, right? So then what does that do for us? Because now we have to do tracking. We have to track where all that stuff comes from to prove that it's clearable for our project. That's where I see that you're going to have more roles.
Would you ever use an AI generated, stock footage sequence without going to the original source? I mean, I'm fine.
I haven't encountered that yet, but I don't.
But I think, if you talk about
The copyright issue.
well, I mean, if you talk about the pre-vis, excuse me, if you talk about the pre-vis components of it, I think that when you're working on things that aren't going to make it to screen, they're not going to have to be clear.
Right.
They're not going to have to go through the legal process. I think there's extraordinary ways that you can save time and consider different options very quickly in a way that looks more mature than you could sketch or draw. And if that can bring the creative process along faster, I think that's going to be an advantage. But I think that it's still the human in the mix. I mean, it's still a director looking at those storyboards and saying, okay, well, I don't quite like this, or don't quite like this. Go back and change it.
Well, in the original Star Wars, when they're mapping out the attacks on the Death Star and all the space battles, they just grabbed black and white footage from World War II movies.
Oh, wow.
And they had, P-38s and B-17s and all this old black and white either war movies or stuff from actually shot, by the directors that were doing the single color stuff. And that was the template. So when you saw these 4 X-Wings pulling off like that to attack the Death Star, that was based on a shot of 4 P-38s coming out of an aircraft carrier in 1945, which made it very confusing for people watching the movie initially. And they would cut from Harrison Ford to the Shield, a black and white gun. But that's functionally what pre-vis is.
Right.
When you go in before the shoot begins, let's build the action sequence. That's going to be okay. That's pretty good. Let's go film it. But then when you film it, oh, well, that's not working. Let's change that. And so I can see AI tools being really valuable. And obviously, George Lucas and license, Hellcats of the Navy from Ronald Reagan just to get the shot of those airplanes. That was just a template for him to make the alien ship.
Well, and I was just thinking like I think it was the Great Mouse Detective animated feature where they had a great chase scene that went through a clock, and it was one of the first, I think, that was mapped out by computer, and then they handed that design to the artist who then painted those cells. But it would have been an almost impossible scene to actually generate those shells
Yeah.
to start with, and that was enabled by the computer. And so I think it was controversial at the time, maybe, or maybe it was amazing for some people. But I think we're kind of in that same situation today, where we see things that are just amazing and blow our mind, but then in the end, they're just how they actually get applied is going to be by people in real, with choices onto the screen.
I mean, I'm wondering also, I mean, just a thought as we were talking about pre-vis and are people using AI? Do you think people will use AI and not say they used AI to create something?
Maybe they won't even know that they're using AI.
I mean, just
Isn't there technology though now that can call it out?
track it.
Well, visually,
Yeah.
I mean, but we were talking earlier about noise. I mean, if you look at the isotope noise reduction tools, those are all based on machine learning models that have listened to room tone and basically being able to pull it out. If you look at some of the tools that can generate stems off of an existing song, that can pull the guitar and the drums and the vocal, and even like instruments, like completely out in stems, out of songs that were recorded in, whatever. They can literally pull the instruments out.
On the Beatles documentary, basically.
Yeah, those are being used today.
Yeah.
They're just. I think they're being. It's just like if you think about music and sound, like I think those tools are already fully embedded in the process. I mean, whether it's performance or whether it's in, post production. I don't think that there's a sound mixer that can live without some of those tools at this point.
Yeah.
But he's controlling it. It's not being controlled by AI. He gets to control and say how high it's going to be.
It's true, but
Is that a lawnmower or is that a sound effect we want?
well, and that saves the take. I mean, if you literally recorded a whole scene and you're like, wow, we had a situation at Evolution where, we had two different microphones. This was during COVID. We had two different microphones recording at the same time, basically because we wanted a backup.
Yeah.
And of course, one of them failed, and the recording we had was the one that had the biggest amount of room tone. So we were able to pull all of that echo out of the room and go for an hour out of that recording that we would have lost that whole scene if it weren't for that. But we had to lift that room
enhanced
out of it.
an
Yeah.
original recording though,
Oh, sure.
right?
Sure.
That's
So we're not-
beneficial.
Definitely not generative, but
But if it's generative, because it will be generative.
Well, it's like
That works.
an automated parametric EQ all of a sudden. That
yeah, but it's so much better.
and
It's so much. I mean, honestly, it's a miracle. I mean, when you hear it, we've taken audio that just sounds
But then you're going to have
recording
creatives
engine
that don't
based.
want that pure sound. They want the realism.
Yeah.
Yes, they want that
Yeah.
realism, right? So, again, it goes back to the creative and what they want. And 5
And what
years
they pay
ago, what is it? The history, or, you can trace your ancestries, ancestry.com. That's what. 5 years ago, they had software that they launched that if you took a picture from one of your relatives from 1930s, they could make it move, mouth and everything.
Yeah.
And that scared the crap out of me. I was like, what? When did that happen? Because on another movie way back, we had a visual effects company that was talking about scanning actors, putting a database together of actors so you wouldn't have to do that for every actor that came along. And I thought, what? You can't.
Did we just have a strike about that?
Yes. but that was over 15 years ago they were talking about doing that. So
100 years ago, they inserted Fred Astaire dancing with a mop in it.
correct. So, it's happening. We just need to ensure that it's we'll never be. I don't know. Terminator kind of scares me.
Well, I think
It
one
kind of feels like it's a Terminator.
it's one thing to say like a generative AI has generated an entire scene, and we've seen like through like the OpenAI video tool, like it's generating like from a prompt, like
Yeah.
here's a video. Now we haven't actually seen it in public. I don't think it's actually released.
To me, these are tools that just still have to. That weird line is becoming thinner or grayer about where we imposing a creative decision on the filmmakers being made by AI rather than by the filmmakers. So if you have somebody generating pre-vis of an action scene of a gunfight in Union Market downtown, and it just creates all these different bits and pieces, and the editor gets that and goes, oh, well, let's like reconfigure that. Great. And then they can turn that into storyboards or into something that the director can take to set and now shoot that. And it beats, a little arrows on a piece of paper or somebody having to sketch it. And it's a wonderful tool for that. But that's still a tool in service of a director making a creative decision of the intensity he wants in that scene. And there's also stuff that just happens kind of by accident on a mixing.
Right.
Yes.
We did a Western at HBO where there's all the horses, this guy's horse is dead and he's being left behind. And so he's, don't worry, I'll hold him off. And he's sitting there with his 2.6 guns blasting away, the posse coming his way. And the director said, well, it's the same old sound effects. And it just reduced the sound effects except for his gun. And then finally his gun was gone. And then when there was one huge, gigantic, BU meter pinning gunshot that brought the escaping heroes to the battle that their friend had died. But that was, I suppose you could tell AI, hey, listen, just take all the effects out slowly and let's see what happens here. Type that in. But the idea of doing that was still the director, still Jeff Murphy. So,
It's subjective, right? It's what you're trying to, could you imagine Memento being created by AI?
I couldn't follow it now. It's not.
Maybe it was AI. Maybe that's why it's so confusing. Okay. No, and I just saw he drew a thing. It's like a loop or something.
Right.
Yeah, something.
I don't want AI to be handcuffing the artist, because if they're putting temp color or temp whatever in, then that's going to inform the colorist, and he doesn't have then a free hand, or she doesn't have a free hand, and then go and do something mind-blowing that you never thought of.
It's like the music editor who tracks the score, and then the director says, well, I want more sound like this composer that I've added there for 10 of the real composer is like,
And then he or she's handcuffed, and they can't.
Well, but how do you get away from that? You can't. You have to put something in there. Yeah,
Mhm.
not going to leave it completely empty.
Well, my question is it going to then, are they going to feed AI and the process that we're doing into these, minds of these AI so they get better and better and better, right? Like, will they be able to do?
I send score.
I think that the one thing that's definitely true about machine learning models is that they learn from the mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, while the first versions of like image generative AI, whether you I don't know, when you use the Adobe one, you could go online and you could say, create me a scene. And a lot of times it looked like, the bully from Toy Story, like pinning different things together that was supposed to be a doll. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't look right at all. Like, that's making me upset looking at what the scene is. And then as the technology gets better and better, I think it suddenly is now creating things that you've gone past that uncanny valley like area where you're now getting into really truly natural looking things. So it's gonna be difficult. And I think, as you said, that it's one thing to be doing the pre-vis, but trying to get something like that on screen, is gonna be challenging.
One of the copyright issues is you can't copyright AI, then.
Yeah, because the AI is derived from like 5,000 different machine learning inputs that they've had.
There was a little mention earlier about the strike and about, there was a strike issue with AI. A lot of things have happened over the past several years between COVID, between the strike, people working remotely. How has all of that affected your jobs with production?
Well, I think for the company I was at, Evolution, I think it was just challenging overall, because I think this time the industry just kind of slowed down as a whole. In the last writer's strike, I think it felt like they really spun up like a lot of new production in different areas, and so there was still a lot going on despite the fact that the writers were on strike. But this time it was more of kind of it's definitely a dampening, and so that was a real challenge.
Does each craft have different AI challenges? In terms of does the other have different challenges and costume designers and set designers and
Act service.
yeah, it's like.
Are we going to have an automate machine outside the crowd transcribers?
I'm thinking of a coffee.
You
I wanted to watch it. Yeah, Justice, it was on.
You have with, AI and people being afraid of AI taking away jobs and, duplicating actors and voices and, is it going to affect editorial? You also have COVID, which changed the way people worked. There were a lot of times when studios were like, you can't take the footage off the lot. Nothing
Correct.
can be removed. But then COVID happened. So like, here, take this drive. We have to work. We need to get this done. So has, basically any sort of legality gone out the window at that point? Or with these new remote workflows, Jump Desktop, Teradici, all these tools, has it opened up production possibilities because you can reach out to a wider audience or wider talent pool to work? Or has it hindered because you'd rather have it all localized?
I think there's good and bad for it, because people, don't have to commute and can work at their pace. But then you don't get all the collaboration that happens, and everybody is together in the office, and you just hear things, whether it's in the break room or coming out of the door of the cutting room, and you can keep up with what's going on and be inspired by other ideas. One editor pulls the other end, hey, listen, I've got this problem here. What do you think? How do I fix this? Or look at what I just did. This is great. Give me a pat on the back.
Yeah. Well, there's also just I was thinking about storyboard artists that when they would storyboard a scene, and then at some point they had to learn to use computers to storyboard stuff, and then those became animatics.
Yep.
Did those guys that started out with a pencil and paper make the transition to doing, very crude animation to more readily block out a big action scene that would be easier for everybody to follow and then plan for the shoot of?
I mean, isn't it just, I think that like every one of us has learned a lot of things over the course of our careers that were new, that we didn't encounter. Or we've been talking about film editing, and we were talking about Avid, and we were talking, I think that it's just a constant cycle of new technologies coming along. And so I think that there are definitely opportunities for everyone to take it, learn a new skill. I mean, the tablet, I'm thinking like the Wacom tablet, changed the world for animators. I mean, suddenly you weren't like piling up your room full of paper. Now you have like just as many chances as you want.
They make you sign a Waco tablet when you want to take money out.
Yeah.
But I think, again, it's depending on the studios and the tech companies, how much they want to take liability on for using AI. Because the current film that I'm on now, at the end of 2022, I asked, can we pull stuff like sound-alike actor's voice for a temp ADR line? They, at first, had no problem with it. And 4 months later, after everything in the news came about AIs taking over, they had to put the brakes on and say, we need to reassess this and find out what we want to let you use and what we don't. Because ultimately, they're going to be on the hook for it. So I think that right there, they're just trying to figure it out. And the tech companies, they're using it a lot more. I mean, look, Siri, Alexa, they're listening all the time.
But they're not necessarily right.
No, they're not right, but for me, they're listening. So how is that not an engine, whatever that phrase is that you use, Robert, so I look my, how is that not pulling information in? Are they pulling information, just listening from these devices?
I was driving home from work, and I asked to play a band that I had as my own Burns on my iPhone. And then when I got home that night and I turned on YouTube, all of a sudden there's all these little documentaries about that band popping up, and I was thinking, who's in my car? It's just,
Well, I
no idea. Could have been total coincidence.
But I mean, how great is it to be able to say, Rick, play me some other songs like the ones I've been listening to, and you get introduced to a new band that you fall in love with. I mean, I think there are, I think as long as it's, informed consent and you understand what you're dealing with, and that the ethical boundaries are being kind of followed. I mean, I think one of the things we haven't really talked about, because we talked about like big films and big television productions, but I think that, in today's world, what is post, for the Instagram video producer?
Right.
I mean, I think one of the, I've been saying for a while, but I think one of the biggest impacts to post in general, and Avid probably knows this, is that, the individual content creators, I mean, they are doing a lot, and they are getting a lot of audience. I mean, there are exercise gurus who run Instagram videos who get millions of views. You think about Mr. Beast, who's turned a YouTube channel into a corporation, into a charity. And all of that's been done with, off-the-shelf cameras and hardware, and they're editing in whatever tool they can get for the cheapest way they can. And that's what that's their experience with building entertainment.
Right.
And that's a completely different path that I think all of you went through, and certainly me. But I think that's a new world. And so you're going to have those folks who are now coming up through those tools and then say like, hey, can you work on one of these shows? I mean, do you want to take the editor who worked on Mr. Beast and bring them in to work on a show? Maybe you do.
And that's
Maybe you do because the aesthetic that they're bringing and the style and the pace and what they're learning through that process, I think is extraordinary. And I think it's one of those things where I think it gets undercut. These if you watch, streaming shows or like television shows, they're now like saying like, oh, 1 million viewers, that's huge. It's like used to be 20. But 20 million views for a Mr. Beast video is probably low.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's, I think.
Well, that's because they can just touch their screen and
These,
a movie and a television show takes a lot longer to.
But a lot of these are long form. I mean, a lot of these are longer. I'm saying they're not a minute and a half. They might be 15 minutes, or 20 minutes, or multi-part.
Are they also made outside of a union jurisdiction as well? It sounds like a lot of stuff is made just.
They started in their house.
Which makes you ask the question: will AI change the union?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we had a PA on a movie I was working on where he was just adept at Adobe After Effects just because he was. And he's now a huge comedy editor, but at the time he was just the PA getting coffee. And one day the editor and/or the director said, "We're talking about wouldn't it be great if we had this explosion thing happen like this?" He said, "Oh, I can do that." And he popped in this, very crude Adobe After Effects shot of what they wanted from a creative standpoint. It wasn't his idea. And then they went, "Oh, cool. Well, what else can you do?" And I had to talk to him. I said, you need to stop this. I haven't got any money to do the final visual effects of these shots that you're now letting them do. And of course, that was a fool's discussion.
I was going to say, that's where I'm at now.
But so here's this guy who is just, happens to be an editor. So in point of fact, if he had an AI agent that generate puppies in the snow, like we've seen, and the director said to the editors, "Would it be great if we had puppies in the snow before this happened?" And he said, "Oh yeah, boy, he could make puppies in the snow." Then it gets passed on to the visual effects company to make 4K puppies in the snow. And
but if your studio doesn't agree with the puppies in the snow and where you pulled it from, I mean that's
you can make your own puppies in the snow.
Well,
but you're copying the AI's version of the copies of the zone that came from somebody else's machine learning.
You legally do that, Interesting enough, also, because you mentioned, the After Effects artist who had a skill that he was able to bring to the table. So I just want to, talk quickly about the skills gap. Did you find, what happened during COVID is a lot of people are like, well, I'm not working, I'm going to leave the industry. Did you find that a lot of people were leaving production? And were you finding, even with the strikes, are you finding retention is difficult? Are you finding when you're trying to get staff or teams together, is it difficult to find people to fill positions?
Not now.
No.
There's a job open, they want it.
Yeah, they want it. Yeah.
It's you were talking earlier though about working remotely and about that kind of alchemy that happens if people are together. That was interesting to see the dynamic change where it wasn't as much fun, which I know everybody cares about, but it wasn't as much fun.
And it's not as fast. You don't get enough turnaround with your answers.
Yeah. Like, well, we'll have that in the afternoon Zoom today, and then hopefully we'll get to that. But, I'm still a big believer that, the collaborative process in a cutting room on a set, it involves us sitting in this general vicinity to say, hey, remember that thing we did before? Can you do that, but add eyebrow raise to it? Or didn't we have a shot of that guy before the slate clap where he looks awful? And we could cut that against this.
You actually are experiencing in real time with your crew what you're trying to get in your shows, right? So I think it benefits. For me, it's my superpower. Yeah. I am at the end of a hallway and I can see all my doors. I can hear all my people and they can say something in a closed room and I'm like, boom, da-da-ba-da-ba-da. So essentially I'm an in-person AI.
No direct staff.
Behind with the two,
Speak more quietly.
exactly right. You know,
A lot
so
of people say that because they're able to work from home, they have a better quality of life, which makes them happier, and they can spend more time with their family.
you're not doing as much work.
Really?
At least I'm not. Not that I don't,
We'd
I'm
have
just-
to like run through like a different tasks. So like, does the Foley editor need to be down the hall for the picture editor? Probably not.
No.
You know, he could probably, you know, as long as he's tutored, they've walked in, he could probably cut the Foley at his house. Your dialogue would probably happen at his house. You know, maybe even, you know, the pre-vis guy can happen at his house. But I really believe that, you know, the keys and the editing, the post supervisor, the editor, the director, you know, the first assistant, the VFX editor, just the people that are involved in the decision making that's organic and human work better together. And, you know,
bouncing ideas off of one another in real time.
the remote thing, you know, absolutely, you know, there's jobs that can go remote, but it's
Well, I think, I mean, you know, we had a discussion the other day about this, and I think that, you know, I don't think it's possible in like our world of documentary television to actually get our editors and our story departments back into
really,
you know, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one of them is economic reason. I think that, you know, that it's just enabling you to like reach a broader people, you have a better audience, you know, potential base of people to bring in that you can use. And so maybe it's like the budgets are getting smaller. And so, you know, renting offices is like an issue now. Yeah. And so, and I think the flip side of that is that the scaling of production, like if you know, we were constrained by the building that we owned. So you could only have so many editors, like until you ran out of space. And then you're bringing in trailers, or you're bringing in, you know, other rooms or renting other spaces, which is very expensive. So now you can scale kind of for as many productions as you can manage. You know, you can now scale up and use people who are all, you know, kind of subletting their, you know, personal space in return for being able to work remote and get that quality of life. So I think, yeah, that's the scaling piece. Like at one point, you know, when we got to the end of COVID, we thought, oh, okay, everyone's going to come back. But we said, wait a minute, we actually don't have enough space for everyone we hired during COVID to come back. And where would they go? We didn't know. And so they never came back.
And plus they were working and they were delivering what they needed to deliver, maybe a little bit later, but it was still being done. So, and like you said, the quality of life.
And I mean, just my experience with the teams too, is that they're actually working longer. Like
That's true.
I think that like some of the teams that we have, you know, and they break it up throughout the day. So like they might work, you know, 4 hours at a time here, and then they take a 2-hour break because they have to go maybe pick up their kid and drop them off at soccer or whatever they're doing. And then they come back and they work for another 4 hours, and then everyone goes to bed, and then basically maybe another couple hours. And so you can
like
kind of work
European way.
whenever you want. Yeah.
5 o'clock, I'm down at the pub. What are you doing at the pub?
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I think that time savings, you know, can be a reward to the product, because you have people who, if they care about what they're doing, they have the opportunity to kind of, you know, take that inspiration. And when they have that inspiration as they're walking down the hall, they can run down and like actually make the change that they were kind of stuck on.
do you see a difference in like non-scripted and scripted in terms of remote cutting?
I mean, I
like reality television and, you know, like hours and hours and hours of footage to rummage through versus, you know, scripted television.
I mean, what do you think? I mean,
I haven't worked in reality, but I would think that an AI could help with string outs, you know, because you got a lot of footage and a lot of cameras that are following people around. To me, I think that would be a benefit.
Logging in
That could help them, but they're not, are they union though?
A lot of them are. But, you know, but like in reality, you're trying to find a story that, you know, yeah, a lot of reality is pretty set. But, you know, at a certain point, you're saying, that's the hero of this episode. But you don't know that till you see all the footage. You know.
Correct.
And can AI do that? Then can AI pick that up? You know,
yeah, I don't think so.
you still need that.
Not quite yet.
But what about the remote aspects of cutting on from reality versus, you know, cutting on theatricals? Or
You still, I mean, they're doing it. A lot
They're
of
doing it, yeah.
people who are editing from home, but again, they're going through hours of footage. I mean, if you're looking at a cooking show, You think about the time that they take to actually cook something that has to be cut down and
the B-roll that goes with it.
camera angles. I mean, you have like, 9 to 12 to maybe 20 different camera angles that has to be gone through for, reality, and the interview, the commentary from the contestants. And
Yes. I mean, depending on the subject matter, I mean, obviously, like with 3,000 hours of footage or something for a season, you're going through all of that over the course of it. That's going to be something that might be best done, like from home. I mean, it's just easier to just watch down, like, an hour of the scene, just to see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like, that a lot of people did leave, but they're still here. Like, they're still working on creative processes. And I think the other piece that I would point out too is that we have a real push for global, departments, where you have, different, we've already seen it with VFX. You see at the end of the trailers, like you already see like 18 companies and they're all over the place. I think you're going to start seeing that in post as well, like different parts of post being done in different places.
We've got different working in Idaho.
Yeah.
There's a guy from Company 3 who they set him up with a great. I think they actually ran the last mile of fiber to his house, so he could.
I mean, it reminds me a little bit of like when the I think it was like the K-Rock DJs, they weren't even in they weren't even in LA. I mean, they basically are like, oh yeah, like we're doing our LA morning show drive time, like talking about traffic and everything, and they're like sitting on their beach, sipping a Mai Tai. Yeah, but that was kind of like an early stage version of what it's like to work from home, and that person had the luxury to do it, and now a bunch of other people have the luxury and are probably not going to give it up very easily.
No, because like you said, we're not just working from 9 until 8 or 9 to 7. Like last night, I had to go do stuff, and then I got on my computer at 10 o'clock. The morning before that, it was 2 in the morning, and I was answering emails and all that stuff. But I had a producer once way before COVID say, I don't care where you're at, get the work done. And from that stage on, which was in the 90s, I was like, great. It's female. It was a female. But I think that a lot of people are hybrid right now. Like a lot of your tech studios don't make all of them come in. They come in on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they're home. So they're doing a halves and halves, which is nice.
Right. And also, I mean, I've talked to a lot of editors who said it's nice if, they may have picked up their kids from school, they've had dinner, and they're like, wait a minute, I have an idea. They can actually go into the other room and try it.
Yeah.
They're not like, oh, wait, I have to wait till I get to the, studio tomorrow to figure that out.
Well, our setup has equipment at their houses and at the office. So they can do both. And, I don't care. Again, I don't care as long as it gets done.
These boundaries are gone. So you could be getting a work call at 8 or 9 o'clock, or, you have to reply to right away.
Yeah. So I think if anything will push people back in the office, it'll be the director.
Yep.
Or, the head of story is basically saying like, okay, I need all of you here because of what you were talking about. But I think, it's hopefully I think the bigger long-term thing for post as well, I think is that bandwidth is going to continue to be a challenge. Especially as we move, it's one thing to say we need bandwidth in LA. We can get bandwidth if you need it. But if you're talking about around the world, I want to do post in different places. I have footage that needs to move, all those different things. Bandwidth is going to continue to be an ongoing challenge.
Commodity that
It's
they're
getting
going
better
to
and
need.
better. I did a show out of Butte, and I was told there's no good internet here. You won't be able to. I said, well, we're shooting in the Civic Center. Or in the convention center. If there's going to be bandwidth in town, that's going to be it.
Yeah.
Sure enough, it was, and we did fine.
It's going to increase your budgets overall for that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Dual systems, one at your home and one at the cutting room, because your creative will call it out. I need my people here.
Their prices, all this stuff, that would be great.
So maybe it's the same system.
Thank you for joining.
It is.
I think like if you all access in the same
Mhm.
system, one virtually from home and the other one constantly, or maybe one in the cloud.
There were like 3 different mechanisms of remote, where there was like jump, and then there were all these different like remote accessing the Nexus.
Yeah.
And the first thing that happened was we had a big effect show at Fox. It was right at the end. They'd done shooting. They'd blocked picture, And so everybody went home and we had a big conversation. So, well, where should we put the Nexus? And we decided it was the VFX editor because he was the guy that needed it, of course. And so we called him up. He said, yeah. So we paid for extra electricity. We put plastic around so that guys with masks can bring the Nexus in and hook it up. And then we were shuttling drives because we just didn't have enough. We didn't have a secure mechanism to do it.
That's what we did.
And then in about a year, all of a sudden there's 3 competing systems that, were my Avid guys at 20 at Sean Yarborough and team, we were like saying, well, we want to use this one, but the company is down on it because of security issues. And so we had to work on the security issues. Now it's just like, you get out, you turn your key and your car works, you get out and you have all the security you need to go. And you just have to make sure it happens out. Right. Exactly. When we had a cooperative actor, I got an actor who was invested in the show, we'd say, listen, we got a preview, it's 3 nights from now. Can you just go to your phone and repeat this line 3 times into your couch?
Yeah.
And then, send it to us.
Yep.
Oh, sure.
And we drop it in.
I've sent out those units. You guys have seen those boxes, right?
Yeah.
And the latest one has the headset, and it has a clip for it for additional boom that comes out. Yeah.
You got like a mic here.
And
oh, that's so cool.
Mhm. So I might be sending it to Hawaii.
I got a lot of looks while I was wearing that at
Did that?
the grocery store last time. So, yeah, I know, like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, I'm just
Working in our closets for
what can make us new and entertaining.
You talk about this tool to get rid of noise. I was privileged to be on the stage when I was like a teenager. They were mixing body heat. There's a line in body heat where William Gert says, and I was just stupid enough when they asked, how does the director said, man, there's I said, well, I don't know anything about your movie, but I don't know what he's saying. And Richard Portman grabbed some box and threw it on the console and patched it in and was, I don't know. Wow. Keep talking, Matt. He experienced proved that I could be convinced of everything. And it was Richard. It was just Richard Portman. And I said, what do you do? Oh, it's parametric EQ. So I think there was some face translation there. So I rolled up and down the figure series and I found it. I threw it down and then I narrowed it out and I threw it back up again. We got rid of it. Well, now your box can do that.
It's phone.
And it honestly, like we were saying earlier, but I it's like the tools before were just working with frequency ranges, and now they're dealing with like actual like matrices of data in multiple dimensions, so they can like find where those radars have impacted and the harmonics and across the entire spectrum, so that it can lift it out without affecting the other frequencies. I mean, there are a few things that I've actually heard that are make your ears
so, like, but just going from a graph EQ to a parametric EQ was nobody thought that was going to stop mixers from making a living.
No, and I don't think, and none of these tools have stopped our sound mixer from making a living. I mean, it just makes their job so much easier. When you're filming in a restaurant, like, can you get the din down to a level where we can actually hear what they're saying? I mean, that's without making them sound like they're on the telephone.
I mean, a lot of amazing banter back and forth here. Thank you so much for joining the panel here for the future of Post. But before we end, I just want to get each of your thoughts on, trends, what you see might be the future of Post. And, we'll definitely probably have some more of these as well. So what do you think?
I think change is going to be the future of Post. It's been like that for 30 years. It's going to continue to be that way. There's always going to be a new file format. There's always going to be a new camera and a new something that we're all going to have to figure out and embrace and work with it. And I remember the editors just saying, I don't like to use that system. Well, if you don't like to use a particular edit system, you've just done yourself out of a job, potentially. So let's keep up with it and learn it.
So you're saying that we have to learn all this, Tony?
We have to keep up.
I think marketing is going to be the first one that has more play in AI than anything, because again, from a podcast that I was sent, thank you very much, they talk about SpongeBob's anniversaries coming up, right? And in the last 2 years, they have been feeding an AI generator all of the SpongeBob stuff to then be able to put SpongeBob on a horse underwater, SpongeBob doing all of this stuff, but it has to meet the IP's restrictions, right? He's got 3 rings around his sock, and they're a certain color. Can AI keep to all of these? So it's based on who's programming all this stuff, right? And now it's pulling in. So for me in post, I think you're going to, like I said, you're going to have some data AI wrangler that's going to be attached to your project from the studio to ensure that, you know, they're covered based on whatever you're using. If it's licensed through Avid, no problem. If it's licensed through Resolve, no problem, because those vendors take that hit. But it's anything that we pull in from the web that we use as layers, you have to justify those layers. I mean, we're having to do that right now for stuff that they pulled art clips off of, like Flickr.
And it wasn't just the stuff they fed into the system. Teach that.
I don't, you know, go ahead.
Oh, no.
No, I'm done.
I just wanted to ensure, I would want to ensure that any AI tools, try to rephrase that in the English language. I just want to ensure that any AI tools that we introduce into the mixing stage or the coloring theater or to the cutting room are in service of a creative decision made by the filmmakers rather than making this decision and then showing it to executives and then having the executives say, yeah, just tighten that up and we got to, because be it a television show or a feature film or a documentary or not scripted, you know, reality TV, it's still a creative process and it should feed the creative process, not take the place of that.
Where that firmware line is.
Firmware line. So look at that. You're making tech jokes.
I know. You've rubbed off on me.
Well, I think in general, I think I'm just very excited about what the possibilities are. I think we've seen a lot of very shiny, like, look at this shiny thing. But in the end, these tools are going to get built, you know, for purpose. Like they're going to have a purpose in our industry. And it's going to unleash some amazing capabilities for the creators. And that is always kind of, I think, what we want. And just in the same way that digital cameras, you know, Michael Mann with his digital cameras was able to shoot at night in a way that no one had ever been able to do, and it looked amazing. And they're like, for a lot of purists, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're not shooting on film. Same will be true. I think you're going to end up with a better set of tools in your toolbox. In the end, you're still going to have the carpenter, like filming, but you may just be assisted in ways, you know, like we usually. I like the idea that my car now keeps me from crashing into someone. You know, that's something that's been built with machine learning that's helping enable you to be safer. And no one wants to be in a crash, and so that's a natural way it fits. And I'm still in control of the car, but sometimes I'm, you know, maybe just a little bit not. Mm-hmm. And so as we get more comfortable with them, and as the tools get more mature and find their way into our workflows, I think they'll be amazing.
Well, that's fantastic, and definitely a very important topic. Technology is changing. It changes rapidly. We're going to see it. We're going to use it. To the panelists, I want to thank you all definitely for joining. Check out their IMDb. They've done some amazing work. So thank you very much. We look forward to talking to you again. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you at our next webinar. Thanks for your time.
Out of the movies. Go to the movies.